You're listening to The Power Project. I'm your host, Brandy Voth, and it's my goal each week to inspire and empower you to go out and live purpose-filled lives and own your God-given power. My guest today is the epitome of walking in purpose. She is fully empowered, and she is absolutely embracing and owning her God-given power. She is the poster child for overcoming adversity and turning obstacles into opportunities. I know that you are going to be just as inspired by her words today as I was the very first time that I heard from her. Now, a trigger warning today, this episode does discuss child sexual exploitation as well as sex trafficking. So know that going in, but it does have a beautiful ending and a rainbow. So let's go ahead and jump right in, shall we? All right, welcome back to The Power Project. I have a guest on today that has one of the most impactful stories we have ever had the joy of sharing on this podcast. She is a mover and a shaker, and to say that she inspires a room full of people to get up and go out and change the world when she speaks would be an understatement. I have Sandy Storm on today. She is a speaker, author, and abolitionist, and she has a mission of inspiration, education, and empowerment while bringing true societal change. I could read you a list of reviews of Sandy and her message, and we could be here all day long. But I did want to read one review that Tommy Grover, who's a human trafficking educator, had on Sandy. She talks about the book that Sandy has written, one of her books, her first book, Becoming Navi, which she's going to tell us all about in a bit. But Tommy says Navi tells her powerful story of being birthed into a family filled with adversity. She reveals both unimaginable darkness and an inexplicable presence of light. Sold in a web of unspeakable sexual abuse as a child, she was still able to sense her heavenly Father's love and care. Navi supernaturally remains unjaded toward God, telling her true account of a young life of horrific circumstances. So you guys, without further ado, let me bring the creator of Navi, Miss Sandy Storm. How are you, Sandy?
Hi, Brandy. I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on the Power Project. I'm super excited about being part of what you're doing and just partnering with you in this.
I'm so excited to have you. And each time that I have someone willing to set, in their truth with me on this show, it humbles me and it just makes me see a little more vision of where this thing is going. So I so appreciate it. I'm so grateful for your time today. I've had the joy of meeting Sandy in person and hearing her speak, and I have her books sitting in front of me right now. So I'm going to go ahead, because I'm struggling over here today with some allergies and a weak voice. I'm going to go ahead and let Sandy jump in with her story, because we have one podcast to get in all the good that we can get in. So Sandy, take it away, girl.
Well, thank you again, Brandy. And just to everybody who's tuning in and listening, I kind of want to give a disclaimer. Usually when I share my story, I start with a little bit of a disclaimer. It's not pretty. It has a happy ending, though. So we all know, I know that your podcast is centered around glorifying God, and this is a place that it's safe to talk about him. So I serve the King of Kings, and he has my life now. So even though there was, like Dr. Tommy said, some inexplicable darkness and a lot of pain in the past, where I am today is whole and healed and healthy and very happily married. I have tons of friends, tons of family that are supportive, and just a great life. So as I'm sharing, I know that there's things that are difficult to listen to, and they're facts, but the truth is who I am in Christ is an overcomer. Mm. So I guess I'll start from the beginning, right? I was born into a family that was dysfunctional. My mother was raised in poverty in a very small town in the Midwest. She dropped out of high school to marry my father, and they were both just desperate. He was desperate in a lot of ways. She was desperate for acceptance and for a way out of poverty, and they just became a toxic combination. There was a lot of violence, a lot of drug use in their marriage, and he was diagnosed schizophrenic when I was very young. And then when I was 3 years old, he left. He left my mother while she was pregnant for my younger sister. And when I was 5 years old, he committed suicide. So my mother became a widow. My sister and I became orphans at that young age, and we lived in abject poverty. We were in a home with 10 people in one house, under 1,000 square feet. And my grandpa was the only one working at the time. He worked at a local factory, so he wasn't making a lot of money. And we just had a lot of struggles. And, I remember food being scarce and things like that, like real poverty. So my mother, in her desperation, again, another wave of desperation in her life, she got connected with a man from our community who was like a businessman. So this man had, his family owned a store, like a little carry-out small grocery store in our town. And he convinced my mother that he could give her a better life, that we could start over, that there was an opportunity to live out of poverty and have nice things and drive new cars and have a nice house. So it didn't take him long to convince her to leave the little town that we were in for something better. So we left when I was 6 years old. We went with him from the Midwest all the way to South Texas. And, that seemed like a dream come true at first, but in reality, it was dangerous. We were in a new place with no friends, no family, no safety net, and we were trapped there. So my mother was desperate again, needed to provide for her kids. And this businessman wasn't a real businessman. He didn't have a job. He didn't have things set up like we thought that he would. So she had to go to work, and he had her go to work at a strip club. So I remember the strip club. I didn't really know what a strip club was because I was so young, but I know now because I can look back and see when we would drop her off, there was like an outline of a nude lady, a naked lady, and neon sign out front of the club. And so that's where the intersection of the commercial sex industry really came into my life. And then when we would drop her off at work, we would go back home, and my mom's boyfriend, I guess they were common law married, so I could call him my stepdad. That's who he was in my life, was a father figure. He started showing me videos of pornography. And at 6 years old, that was like a training manual for me. Those were training sessions of, this is what women and men do together. There were children in some of the videos. This is what children do with men. And this is what's going to be expected of you. So through that time, like through that next few years, there was a lot of pornography. There was a lot of not just sexual abuse by my mother's boyfriend, but there were other men involved. We were taken after he did get connections or whatever, get some kind of a business going there in that new city. He started taking us to fancy parties or yacht clubs and country clubs where there were fancy meals and people all dressed up, but there were also back rooms where there were children. I wasn't the only one. There were rooms behind the locker rooms in the golf clubs. There were bedrooms at some of these parties where they would keep kids, and play porn. And then men would come in with their fantasy, and they would get to fulfill that with a real live human child right there in the party. So now, knowing what I know now, that was more than sexual abuse. That was a child sex ring. That was, a network of men that were taking advantage of children. So that went on for about, 5 or 6 years. And in that time we had a new home built, and my mom and this man started driving brand new cars. The home that we had built was on the same street as the junior high school. And I mention that because that's the reality that sex predators who prey on children want to be close to where children are. They want to be in the neighborhood where there's parks and schools. And so it's just really important to be aware of who your neighbors are and what's going on if you're in those neighborhoods or if you have children. So we lived in this beautiful new home with beautiful furniture and brand new cars in the driveway. And on the outside, everything looked like we were the suburban family where everything was perfect. But in reality, it was like living in hell for me on the other side of that door. And at 12 years old, I started running away. So I thought it was better to run away from home and sleep under a bridge or in a baseball field dugout, or eat food out of trash cans, or try to steal food from the corner store. Then that was a better choice for me than staying in this abusive situation. So as I'm going through this life of just desperation, trying to find food, trying to find a place to stay, I had become aware of marijuana and alcohol. And at that time, my body and my mind just wanted to be numb. So I would try to find money for drugs or alcohol as well. So at that time, when I look back on it now, it's almost shocking to me to think about it. But there was never an end to the cycle of men who were willing to exploit me during that time. Like, there were plenty of men who would say, "Oh, I'll let you sleep in my apartment tonight." And then we would get back to his apartment and he would expect something from me. Or, "Oh, here, I have some drugs, or I have some alcohol, or I have some food. Do you want some of this food? Do you want some of these drugs?" And it would be at a price. Like, I had to pay with access to my body. So sometimes, even at that time, sometimes I was afraid that the men wouldn't help me if they knew I was 12. So I would lie and say I was 14, because that, to me, for some reason, that sounded more believable. And so they knew how young and desperate I was, but they continued to victimize me and get what they wanted out of the situation, take advantage of a child. So that went on for, on and off for a couple years. I ran away. I would get caught, get put in juvenile detention, get caught, get put in a mental hospital, or just cycled through all of these cycles of the foster care system. And it was just a mess. That whole year or two of my life was a mess. So around 13, I ended up pregnant and somehow ended back up in my mother's care. And she had an abortion performed to get rid of that problem. So this is where the story goes from, sexual abuse and what really is sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, and abortion intersected. So at that time, I didn't even know I was pregnant. I had to go back as an adult and read through my medical records. And I have, printouts of all of the medical records for this time. And that's when the light bulb moment happened for me, that I saw that was an abortion that had been performed. But I had memories of being strapped to the bed and fighting. And I fought through the whole procedure. And at the time, I thought that the doctors were abusing me the way I had been abused by all of these men, for my whole childhood. And I thought that they were just doing things that, like, violating me in the similar way. But now that I have my medical records and I can see what really happened, I know it was an abortion. And the scars from that abortion have prevented my husband and I from carrying the 3 pregnancies that we've had together since we've been married. So the effect of abortion wasn't just, that one child being taken, but the 3 children that I've been pregnant with my husband have been lost because of the scars. So that was around 13 years old. Around 14 and 15, we ended up back in the Midwest, back in poverty again. Like, poverty is a common theme in the story, and poverty is a big driving force behind the commercial sex industry, because when women are in poverty, they get desperate, and often traffickers will seek out women that are in poverty, women or teenage girls in poverty. So we ended up back in poverty. My mother was married to a new man, and they would take me to parties with them. Again, like the same theme of partying with a room full of men or a group of men. It just seemed like a common thing throughout my life. So these men were bikers. They weren't the fancy businessmen like I had been surrounded by previously. So how this would play out is we would all get high, like we would do cocaine or smoke a bunch of marijuana or some kind of drugs and alcohol. And then we would party all night long, and I would end up passed around from one guy to the next. And I would wake up the next day and I would be so filled with shame and so physically hungover and just desperate. And now when I look back at that situation, at those situations, I think, wow, was I like the payment for the drugs? Was I like a 14-year-old girl or a 15-year-old girl? The trade-off for, they let my mom come and my stepdad come to these parties because that was like their entry fee. So that went on for a couple years. And then I started meeting my own guys, like meeting boyfriends. So 16, 17, 18 years old, I had just a knack for attracting guys in their 30s who had fast cars, lots of money, lots of drugs. Most of these guys had been in prison. They had guns. They had track records of violence against women. They had track records of taking advantage of people, robbing people, stealing things, violent behavior. And these were guys that I thought were my boyfriends. They were, when I look back on it now, it's just crazy because I don't even think they weren't even attractive. What attracted me to them was that through them, I had access to the drugs that I wanted to keep my mind and my body numb. Through them, I had access to that fantasy life of driving the fancy car, driving the fast car, being in an apartment when I was only 16, 17 years old, having my own place. But it was a lie. It was all a lie. And now that I know what I know, I see that these guys weren't really my boyfriends. They were traffickers. They were using me to get what they wanted. And I think of what they would have me do for the drugs that they were giving me. I was being trafficked. I think about how they would send me into the high school to bring another girl home with me for the weekend to party with their friends. And we would all get high and party together. I was helping them to traffic another girl. So that lifestyle led me to 18 years old. I'm like, I'm getting out of here. I'm getting out of poverty. I'm going to make my own rules. I'm going to live the life that I want to live. So I think I'm making powerful choices by moving to the city and traveling and like sowing my wild oats. But what I was really doing was working in strip clubs and hooking up with sugar daddies thinking that I'm finally making the rules, thinking that I'm finally the one in control. And in reality, I'm just being used. I'm being sold by the strip club manager now. I'm being trafficked by the sugar daddy. Now, I would come home from a good night at the strip club, or a weekend partying with a sugar daddy, and I would have a big fat stack of cash. And I remember thinking every time, oh, now it's party time. Like, now I can buy all the drugs I want. Now I can go shopping and buy all these clothes. I stayed in nice hotels. I drove nice cars, and it was all at a price. And the common theme through all of this, from childhood through my teenage years, through my 20s, the common theme was the never ending flow of men who were always there, ready to pay a price to access me when I was vulnerable. And I know that's a hard thing to hear. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a man hater. I've been married almost 16 years. I have brothers. I have spiritual papas. I love men. I have lots of friends that are male. But the truth is, we created a society that empowers men to say, I have a right to this woman's body. I'm going to get what I want out of this relationship, whether it costs her, no matter what it costs her. So through this time, through my early 20s, the strip club life wasn't really leading me anywhere. The sugar daddies would disappear. They were never steady in my life. So I just gave up. I stopped even trying, and I ended up on the street under the control of what people see in their mind as pimps. Might not really paint the picture the accurate way of what a real pimp is. They're not flashy guys that wear hats with feathers in them and carry a cane and wear like a long fur coat. Pimping out something doesn't mean making it better or improving it. Like, you might see a TV show that says pimp your ride or pimp your crib. That's a lie. That culture that's being painted around pimps is a lie. What a pimp actually is a man who smacks a woman and says, get out on that street corner and don't come back until you got my money. And he forces her to go into cars or motel rooms with strangers and do sex acts for money. One pimp that had control over me would take a carload of us to a truck stop and have us get out. And he would close and lock the doors to the car and say, you're not getting back in until you have my $1,000. So we each had to go get $1,000. The first time, so I was maybe 23, 24 years old in this case when this happened. And the girl that he sent out to train me, because I had never went into a truck stop before and tried to go, talk to a bunch of truckers to try to get money from them for sex. That's something I had never done. So he sent a 14-year-old girl with me to train me. So, and this 14-year-old girl had been doing it for like a year or two and was like a pro at this life. So, I mean, at this point in my life, I'm completely at the bottom of, I just felt like something you would scrape off of a shoe. I was so desperate. I just wanted drugs to make my mind stop. I just wanted, I was suicidal. Every day I thought about different ways that I could kill myself, or that if I overdosed again, that this time it would be the last time. And, in the midst of all of this, no matter how dark the darkness was, and I know that this story has not been pretty, but I always found a way out. I always found a way out of the situation before it got worse, right? So fast forward another year or two, and I had met my husband in my early 20s, and we just became friends. At the time, I felt like I was such a mess and so out of control that he was not what I was looking for. He wasn't wild enough. He didn't have access to the drugs I wanted. He was not the man that was going to help me to destroy my life. So I didn't want anything to do with him. But he pursued me for 5 years, and he watched my life just spiral out of control. And he was the constant. Like he was the one nice guy that I knew. So I gave in to him and I said yes, and we got married. So we end up married, we end up together, and my life is still getting pieced back together. But 8 months after I gave my vows to my husband, I had an encounter with Jesus, and everything changed in a moment, like in an instant. Everything changed. So that night that I gave my life to the Lord, he said something really simple to me. He said, "I require your life." And Brandy, I had never heard the voice of God before. Not like that. I had never really heard him and knew it was him. And I didn't realize I had an option. I just gave my life to him. I gave him my broken life, my addicted life, my desperate life, everything that was in shambles. I just handed it all to him. And he immediately gave me a brand new life. So there was just an instant transformation. And in that moment, he made everything new. He truly gave me a brand new life. He took everything that was broken, everything that was damaged, everything that was wounded, and he gave me a brand new life. And that life, that was 15 years ago. And that life is what I'm still living today. I believe that he brought me into his kingdom. And every morning, I get to go further and deeper into that kingdom. Every day, I get to connect with him and explore more of his love and more of his plan for my life, his purpose for my life. He's given me the key of forgiveness, specifically forgiveness towards my mother. And with that key, I can open the door to the kingdom, and I have full access. As much as I want, I can go in and out. I can explore as much as I want of his kingdom. And that I believe that key of forgiveness and the fact that I gave my life to Jesus, I didn't just ask him into my heart. I didn't say a repeat after me prayer. I gave my life over and I got a brand new life. So this is where I was empowered. And in that moment, everything changed. He didn't just forgive me of my sins, but he answered every sin that had ever been committed against me.
So now on the forgiveness, because I think this is where people get stuck. I see other women that have gone through similar situations as yours. And I think that one of the things that is just so impactful about your story, that is absolutely a testimony to grace in its truest and purest form, is the fact that you were able to forgive, you were able to move on, you were able to move forward, and you were able to fully walk in grace and extend grace. I think that so many people, and people that have gone through circumstances like yours, and people who have just gone, and I don't want to say just to minimalize, but people who have walked through other traumatic situations of childhood abuse or pain from their past. Do you feel, because I know I personally do, and this is just me from the outside looking in, because listen, I have lived a really fantastic life. I'm not going to pretend that I can even come close to understanding what you've been through. But do you feel like part of the paralysis, part of the not being able to move forward, part of the not being able to walk in your purpose and your call, do you think that really is tied to that forgiveness piece?
Oh, absolutely. I see forgiveness as a key. So So we read in the Bible that Jesus is the door, right? He's the way, the truth, and the life. He's the door that we go through. But I think forgiveness is the key that unlocks that door. So we have to receive his forgiveness towards us for everything that we've done that wasn't part of his plan and wasn't part of his purpose for us. But when we hold that key in our hand, when we receive his forgiveness, and then we can offer it to others, that's where the power comes from. So I think that, to kind of line this up with your purpose of your podcast about empowering the people who are, trying to get that motivation to move forward. I think that a good way for people to catch a hold of this is that our forgiveness, human forgiveness, is conditional, right? It's, well, if you say you're sorry, then I will forgive you, but I'm not going to forget about it. If you apologize, if you pay the debt that you owe me, then I'll overlook the fact that you did something hurtful, but I'm going to keep track of it in my mind. And we're going to, if anything comes up again, I'm going to remind you of that time you hurt me. That's human forgiveness.
Yeah.
But what I experienced and what I think where the power comes from is supernatural. So this is Jesus's forgiveness. It is not subject to the laws of this land. Like, he's the king of a kingdom. And when his kingdom became real in my life and I began to access that kingdom, I'm not going to leave that to come back to the way of the world. Like, that forgiveness is more powerful. One drop of his blood was enough forgiveness for all of humanity that's ever lived on this earth. And we're recording this podcast right after the Holy Week or Passover, Easter season, right? So we've been talking a lot in the last couple of weeks about him dying on the cross and him shedding his blood and the blood being on the doorpost even before Jesus walked this earth. The way that blood of forgiveness gives us access to the Father. It gives us access to his kingdom. That's where the power comes from. If I did this on my own, then this would be a different story. Then I would still be, trying to figure out how to go through the different layers or levels of trauma that had happened. But I was healed in an instant. Now, I'm not saying that that there aren't levels of trauma. And I really want to tell you how much I appreciate what you said about not comparing. Like, we can't compare our stories. I can't look at somebody who has cancer and say, oh, well, I've had the flu, so I know what it's like to be sick, but I don't really know what it's like to be sick like you're sick. Mm-hmm. So I think that something that we tend to do with people that have experienced trauma or that have had childhood abuse, it's just our humanity. We have that tendency to compare, but we can't. We got to stop doing that. Mm-hmm. We've got to look at each other as where we are today and where we are moving forward. So I think where we get stuck is where we want to keep going back to the past and giving that past a level of control over us. But forgiveness, the forgiveness that comes from Jesus, it answers the sin that was committed against us. It answers. I don't need an explanation anymore. I don't need to hold it up and re-examine it over and over and peel it back like an onion anymore. I have the power because I'm in Christ. So I have the power. Now, I think there's steps that I've learned, and I was discipled in the local church. I'm a huge advocate and fan of the local church. And I went to Bible study and I learned real simple things like taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. I learned real simple things like casting down vain imaginations, anything that's not giving life, anything that's not building me up. I cast it down at his feet. I learned real simple things like prayer and fasting. I learned how to worship. I learned how to connect with the Lord on a daily basis. to give him access to me so I would gain access to him. And I think that those things are foundational. And maybe because I wasn't raised in the church, I didn't take them for granted. I took them at face value. I was reading my Bible and like going, oh my gosh, did you know? Did you know what this book says? That I have power in Christ. I'm a new creation. All that's old is passed away, and behold, I'm made new. Like those things became reality to me. And the first step was through forgiveness. That's where the power is.
So I think what you just touched on is so important to anyone listening, because human nature is we like to make excuses, right? Human nature is we like to say, that's great that Sandy has that story. That's great that Sandy was able to overcome obstacles. Sandy is obviously a very faith-filled believer that has been taught the way and shown the way. And the truth of the matter is, you had no concept of God or Jesus or grace or forgiveness before your encounter with God, correct?
Right. But in that moment, he showed me he was there the whole time. He was there. He was with me in the womb. He was with me as a child. He was with me as a teenager, as a 12-year-old, sleeping under bridges, digging in trash cans for food. He was with me when I was struggling for identity through my teenage years. He was with me on the abortion table. He was with me in the strip club. He was with me on the street corner. He never left me. Sometimes he was helping me to stay alive. Like sometimes he was fighting the demons that were trying to drag me to hell while I was overdosing on drugs. Sometimes he was just showing me a way to safety. Sometimes he was bringing me to a place where I could find rest, but he was always with me. And I didn't even know him. I was lost. I was in the world. I had no connection to him, but he was always, always, always there. And when I did the transaction, right, that was reconciliation. I had a debt and he paid it. So the columns matched up when he was done. So when I gave him my life, I got a new one. And it went from him always being with me to now he's inside of me. Now he's moving me forward. And now the same power that raised Jesus Christ from the grave lives inside of me. Like I'm set up for success.
What do you say? What do you say to the person sitting at home that thinks that sounds great, but they got to make it look pretty? They got to get it all together. They got to stop doing what they're doing. They got to start doing more of this. What do you say to them that they're waiting to take that step?
Oh, I don't know why anybody would wait. He's the best decision that you could ever make. Like Jesus is the answer to getting everything pretty. Jesus is the answer to making everything new. Jesus is the answer to getting it right.
Yeah.
There's no reason to wait, right? First of all, he has a purpose and a plan for our lives, and we can't fulfill it without his power. So there's no reason to wait. And I mean, I still don't have it all together. I still fail miserably every single day, but I have grace now. Like that's the beautiful thing, is that I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to have it all figured out. But I know the one who does. And we hang out on a daily basis. like we're doing this together, and it's his joy to see me learn and to see me grow, and to see me make choices that are better tomorrow than I did today. So, if I had it all figured out, then I probably wouldn't be here. I'd be on a beach somewhere on vacation.
I love that.
Right?
I love that. So tell us, so you have 2 books out, and then you have a third that's coming out soon. Tell us a little bit about the books.
Okay. Thank you. So I've written 2 books. They go together. They're a set. So Becoming Navi is the beginning of the story, and then the second the second volume in the series is Hello Navi. I'm writing Goodbye Navi right now, and I hope to have that out by the end of the summer. So the stories are written as they're allegorical. So that means that they're not memoirs. They are written. I like to compare it as you can watch a documentary that's filled with facts and figures, or you can watch a movie based on true events. And that's how I write, is like the movie based on true events. So there's character, plot development. It's like you're going on a journey with somebody instead of learning a story. The books have been compared to the book The Shack. And I think there are some similarities maybe in the style. But Becoming Navi starts at the very beginning and tells the story of up until I was about 12 years old, from as if somebody was outside looking in. And wow, okay, so I might not have known that the Lord was there at the time, but now that I'm writing it from a place of wholeness and healing, I'm writing in the parts where he was there and the Father was with me through it all. Then the second book, Hello Navi, is the story of kind of the middle of my story, I guess. And the way it's written is with Jesus woven through the book. But one thing that you might notice as you read the stories is it doesn't say God. They don't say Jesus anywhere in them. And I did that deliberately because I want a girl who's in the same position that I was at that time to be able to pick up these books and read her own story and see hope on every page. But I don't want her to feel like it's religious and like religion being pushed down her throat. So that it gives room for the experience to be authentic.
Right. I think I just had a conversation about this yesterday. I think that you don't have to tell people that you're a Christian. They should see that you're a Christian, and you don't have to say, God for them to feel God. So I think that, because like you said, it can get confusing, and just what our society has imposed with religion itself, that girl would instantly feel not worthy, possibly.
Yeah.
If she felt judgment of religion. So I love that. I'm into the first book, and listen, anyone that picks up this book is going to know that there is Jesus and God are dancing all throughout these books. But I love that you're writing in a manner that she's going to receive it, and that she's going to be able to identify, okay, something's got me here, so, and so I love that. And so tell us about what Goodbye Navi is going to look like. Give us a little teaser for, since it's not out yet.
Oh, just pray for me. I got to keep writing. So I really think, Navi is my name in Hebrew. Really, it means prophet in Hebrew. So it's like my God-given name, right? And Becoming Navi is the beginning of the story, and it starts in the darkness and it ends in the darkness. Hello Navi is the middle of the story, and it starts in the darkness and it ends in a little bit of light. But Goodbye Navi is going to be the story of how I really got out of that life and how I learned to die to self. So it's going to be the story of him having his way with me. And if we can go back just a minute to, I really feel compelled to share just one small thing about any girls that might be listening to your podcast that have been affected by the commercial sex industry, or who are even still in that life. I know it's difficult for somebody who's had the experiences of victimization through the industry of commercial sexual exploitation, to receive from people in the church, because a lot of the times, unfortunately, the people who are victimizing them might be, church people. So anytime a woman is in that place of vulnerability and somebody that she should be able to trust, like a doctor or a coach or a police officer or a pastor, would be somebody who, instead of helping her in her time of desperation, is, keeping her as a victim by using her as just a body part instead of as a human being. It just reinforces those lies that that's all she's good for, or that she'll never get out of that lifestyle, or that she's trapped there and nobody's ever going to help her. So I know this from experience. I know how hard it was to learn to trust people in authority, like police or pastors, or, men who I should have been able to go to for help, because they were the ones who had come to me and made me into a victim.
I think that is like such a gateway, that is when a girl is trying to get out of the lifestyle, that this person that is going to be a protector and provide them security, and I'm going to take care of you. And they fall into that same routine of exploitation.
Right.
So I think it's really important that you speak to that, because it's just a vicious cycle. And so I know that you have a platform that you're very much committed to, taking away the demand and shining a light on what the commercial sex industry truly looks like. And I know that you have a nonprofit organization that you are creating a movement with. So tell us about that and what your vision is, where it's at now, where you want it to go.
Okay. So we're starting a nonprofit, and it's called Dry Bones Army. So there's 3 aspects that we're seeing be, in the formation of this organization. The first being prevention, where speaking to churches, speaking to groups, mothers of sons, groups of men who want to be part of disrupting the demand. So when we work as Dry Bones Army to bring education and awareness of human trafficking and what the commercial sex industry really looks like, it's empowering young men to never become sex buyers. It's empowering young women to be aware of the tricks of traffickers, so we can help prevent them from being victimized. The other 2 aspects are disrupting the demand of abortion and sex buyers. So that looks like educating men who have been arrested for buying sex, and taking them through what we're calling Sun School instead of John School. There are programs all over the country called John School, and I don't think that that's very effective. First of all, I have friends named John. I don't know why they're picking on John.
Well, and there's and the John School, it comes from a place of shame, and
Right.
I think there's a lot of collateral damage involved, including family and business. And so yeah, tell us a little about Sun School.
So the Sun School curriculum that we've developed is focused on speaking life and empowering the men who, I guess there is a movement that says, oh, you don't want to do that. You don't want to buy her for sex. She's somebody's daughter. But that's not effective. It's not as effective, let's say, as saying, hey, man, you don't want to do that because you're somebody's son. Like, you didn't have a dad to teach him about justice and about integrity and about character and these other traits that go into making a man a hero. So what our goal is that we would see the men either never get out of the car and go into the strip club, or get out of the car and go into the massage parlor, or pick up the girl on the street corner, or go into the hotel room. Like that would be a choice that he could never even think of making. But if he has made that choice, and if he's been arrested, and, now he's taking our curriculum, then instead of putting shame on and saying, what he did was a bad thing, it was harmful, but it wasn't just harmful to the girl, it was harmful to him. He was looking for love in all the wrong places, and he did not get what he paid for. He bought a lie. And so if we can answer those deep, the root of why he was there, and speak life and breathe over that hero heart that we know is inside of every man, and bring that to life, we think that will not only change his behavior modification is important, and fear of punishment does go a long way. But if we can really change his heart, that's what we're after. So that's what Dry Bones Army, that's, our vision. Where it is right now, we still haven't even incorporated our nonprofit 501c3 as of yet, but we're just getting the right people in the right places. So that's all unfolding in God's timing, not in Fanny's
And so, right. I know. You're like me. I want it done yesterday.
Yeah.
So we spoke earlier when we were chatting before we did the interview, and I loved what you said, because I come in contact with people every single day that tell me, I know that I'm supposed to be doing something. I know that I feel a call. I know that I'm supposed to be involved in human trafficking, or I know I have a purpose, but I can't figure out what my purpose is. And so you spoke about the Dry Bones Army and speaking to churches. So just tell people what it looks like to get involved.
Well, there's so much going on right now. So I look at this, I call it the justice movement, and I've been involved since 2009. So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in the movement to end human trafficking. And it's not all pretty. So we've seen a lot of ups and downs. Really, the beginning of the movement was all about raising awareness. We still need to raise awareness because people need to know that this is really happening. People need to know that this is true, that these are stories that are affecting women's lives, children's lives, and men's lives in our country. It doesn't look like Taken in the movies. It doesn't look like here in the United States. It looks different than it does in Thailand or Cambodia or India. And so we need accurate information being shared. And there's been a rise over the last 7 to 5 years of a lot of people building homes for victims to bring a woman or a child out of victimhood and into a place of, being a thriving life, being a survivor. So that's great. And I love seeing all of these homes. Like you and I met at the gala for Refuge for Women, and the work they're doing is incredible. And I honor them, and I'm so grateful for them. My life could have looked very different if I had an opportunity to participate in a program like what they're putting together. And then where I see the movement going is in ending the demand. Like we can't build enough homes for every 14-year-old vulnerable girl. We can't. We can't build enough homes for every woman who's been widowed. And really a widow in our day is just a single mom, or every child who doesn't have a dad, who's living an orphan lifestyle. Like there's not enough land to build the homes. There's not enough money to fund that work. So if we can go to the root and we can end the demand, that's where I see the movement going. So there's so many places that people can fill a need, whether it's in organizing public awareness campaigns, whether it's in helping fundraising for the homes, whether it's in the education piece and prevention and education to disrupt the demand. There's plenty of organizations that are doing plenty of good work. I would say when you're looking for something to do, like this is me breathing over the audience and saying, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Get up, let his breath come into you, get strong, and go out and do the work of the army of abolitionists. So when you go out there, just make sure that the work that they're doing is authentic and legitimate. that they're not being part of the problem by re-victimizing people that have been affected negatively by the commercial sex industry. Any organization that's operating on a shame-based or on something that doesn't line up with honor and integrity, it's not going to be something you want to get involved with. But there's so many great organizations. I know you're part of A21, and Christine Kane built the stage I stand on today. I have a lot of respect and honor for that woman.
Yes.
She's not a survivor, and I don't think that everything should be ran by survivors, but she's certainly done a lot to help a lot of survivors. So A21 is a great organization to get involved with. I support Exodus Cry. I worked with Exodus Cry at the last 2 Super Bowls to do outreach in the communities where the Super Bowls were. They have a great website filled with tons of great information. I love Fight the New Drug. Fight the New Drug is a great website, and you can partner with them. You can share their information on social media to get the truth about pornography and the commercial sex industry out there. It's secular based, so there's no religion attached to it. And they have tons of facts and figures, tons of studies that have been done. Dr. Melissa Farley has done research that for many years put together tons of research about the negative effect of the commercial sex industry. So whatever somebody would be interested in, whether it's, being on the back end, helping to build an organization or helping to support an organization, whether it would be being out more in the front, organizing film screenings or organizing community events to disseminate information, planting flowers or doing landscaping at one of these amazing homes that is being built to help rehabilitate survivors, or, more doing work like some of what we do and going out on outreach and going out to the streets and, to areas where we can really speak life into the men that are, that have been on the other side of what the commercial sex industry does and been driving that end. So there's so much work to do that we can find a place for anyone.
That you're absolutely right. That's what I tell everyone. I'm like, listen, there is an organization you can plug into, I promise, that is doing it at a high level. And you can be the body, because we need more bodies. So real quick, because I could talk with you all day long, like we could just hang out here forever. But tell everyone how they can get in touch with you, where they can find you on social media, if they want you to come speak to their church, or like, how does everyone get in touch with Sandy?
Okay, we have a website, AuthorSandyStorm.com. It's AuthorSandystorm.com. And then I'm on Insta and Facebook at Author Sandy Storm. I just started a LinkedIn page as well. So all you business people, hook up with me on LinkedIn.
I have yet to crack the LinkedIn code. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
I think I have 24 friends or 36 friends or followers or links or whatever.
Right.
And then I have on AuthorSandyStorm.com, I have a speaker request form. And it's a fillable PDF. It's real easy to click on, type in the information, and then email back to me. Or just, send me an email, Sandy@AuthorSandyStorm.com. And I love to speak at churches. I spoke at 3 churches on Palm Sunday, 3 different churches.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so you can go to my Insta story and see, I try to do like 3 different posts of those 3 different churches. Then I also speak like at women's conferences. I do a lot of secular. I probably do 50-50 in my speaking or outreach to educate, as far as like Christian centered or, church centered ministry organizations. And I speak at a lot of secular events too. I train businesses, law enforcement, healthcare. I speak at a lot of Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, to raise awareness as well. So
awesome.
That's where you can find me.
Awesome. I love that you are just using your voice, sharing your voice, being the light. I am so humbled and grateful to know you, to have gotten to spend this time with you. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. And I just pray blessings over your ministry far and wide, and that you will reach that one person today that needs to be reached sitting at home listening to this podcast, that they will be inspired to submit their lives to Christ, to break the cycle, to take a stand, to step out of the boat. And thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to get to know you better.
Thank you, Brandy. It has truly been an honor, and I just can't wait to see where this podcast goes. I'm so excited to get the link so I can share it with all my peeps as well. So thank you for what you're doing to give power to women.
Absolutely.
God bless you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us today. I hope that you were just as amazed at Sandy's story and her victory and triumph as I was. As always, if you like what you heard today, do us a favor, go write a review, share this on all forms of social media, get crazy and go tell your girlfriends about it, because you guys, I firmly believe that this platform was built to share these stories and bring these stories to you. There are more people out there that have a story to tell, that need a platform to share it from, and this is the vehicle that makes that possible. So please do us a favor. We love all the support that you show this show, but go write a review and share it with all of your friends. I can't wait to talk to you guys next week, but until then, go out and live your best purpose-filled life.